Jeffrey Woods was born in a small town in America, a world where everything was calm and peaceful. The town was lost within nature, a place where everyone smiled at each other, whether they knew each other or not. His mother Sarah, father Richard, and his little brother Lew were Jeff's most cherished treasures. They were a close-knit, loving family. As a child, Jeff was quiet and introverted. He didn't have many friends, but he found all his happiness within his home. The first major challenge in Jeff's life began at school. Initially, no one paid much attention to him there. However, after a while, the new students started noticing Jeff. These kids were among the most popular in the class, and they found it amusing to mock Jeff for his silence and appearance. One day, Jeff was sitting in his spot at the back of the class, staring out the window, lost in his thoughts, when a group of students surrounded him. At first, Jeff tried to ignore what they were saying, but as time went on, the bullying intensified. One of the popular kids in school pulled Jeff's hair and said, "How can you even call yourself a person with hair like this?" The others laughed and added, "Do it in front of everyone. Maybe you'll get someone's attention." At first, Jeff simply lowered his head and sat quietly. Loneliness and silence were familiar to him. However, day by day, the mockery continued to build up. The students went further in humiliating him whenever they found him alone. Jeff's clothes, and even the old shoes he sometimes wore to school, became their source of ridicule. The anger inside him began to grow. At that moment, something happened. A spark ignited within Jeff. The anger he had suppressed for years suddenly wanted to break free. In that instant, something inside Jeff shattered. That was the moment everything began. The bullying had taken something from him, and Jeff would never be the same again. Things weren't much different at home. Jeff's silence didn't go unnoticed by his family. His mother, Sarah, would ask every day, "Jeff, why are you so quiet? Did something happen?" But Jeff always brushed it off with, "Oh, what a simple supple. No, I'm fine." However, Sarah could feel that her son was going through a change. His brother Lew also noticed how Jeff was becoming more distant, and the emptiness in his eyes growing deeper. One night his family had gone to town, leaving Jeff alone. He always preferred staying in the dark at night because, to him, the darkness felt like a world where everything paused for a while. In the dark, he could feel the anger within him growing stronger. Spending the night with his thoughts brought him a strange sense of peace. After a while, Jeff's dark thoughts began to intensify. The void created by the bullying at school and the loneliness at home was pulling him further into a darker path. His eyes seemed to grow emptier with each passing day. He felt as though there was something he had to do. Instead of harming himself, he decided that he needed to channel his anger outward. That night, Jeff picked up a knife. The knife felt like a form of liberation to him. In that moment, everything seemed to have a purpose. Slowly, he carved his face, and with those scars, a smile appeared. But that smile was no longer the same. It had become a symbol of fear. That night, the darkness within Jeff awakened once more. The smile on his face wasn't just a fleeting moment of relief. For hours, he stared at that terrifying smile in the mirror. He felt powerful, but this power was intertwined with an overwhelming desire to harm others. He felt free, as though the anger that had been bottled up inside him for years was finally being unleashed. The next morning, Jeff's spirit had completely transformed. Before his family returned, he gathered all the knives in the house and placed them in one corner. His eyes no longer belonged to the Jeff they once knew. He had become a shadowy figure, reshaped by the void and rage within him. That smile on his face wasn't just a smile. It was a mask, one that stripped away all traces of his humanity. When his mother, Sarah, noticed Jeff's state, it was already too late. Over time, Jeff's behavior at home became increasingly strange. He seemed more and more disconnected from his surroundings. One evening, while the family was sitting down for dinner, Jeff's demeanor grew even more unsettling. "Hey bro, is something wrong?" "What happened?" Leo asked, noticing his brother's unusual silence. Jeff looked at Leo for a moment. but his eyes were lifeless. Slowly, without a word, he got up and walked to his room. Concerned, Liu followed him, but when he entered Jeff's room, he was greeted by that horrifying smile. At that moment, Liu realized something was terribly wrong. Jeff turned to Liu and said, "Leave me alone, Liu. It's too late for everything." That smile on Jeff's face sent chills down Liu's spine, filling him with an unfamiliar and profound fear. First, he approached his mother, Sarah. One knife was enough to end a life. A single moment of hesitation was followed by an instant that changed everything forever. His family's screams were swallowed by the deep darkness of the town. Yet as Jeff watched the moment when everything ended, he continued to feel the emptiness inside him. All of his actions seemed meaningless. By morning, fear had gripped the town. His family's bodies were found scattered across the house, soaked in blood. Jeff's heart had carried out the act, but there was no remorse within him. In that moment, all the innocence and love from his past had vanished. Jeff had transformed into someone else entirely. After Jeff killed his family, he vanished from the town. No one had any idea what had happened in the wooded area near the river. Following the deaths of his family, the townspeople assumed Jeff had disappeared and went back to living in peace. However, several years later, strange things began to happen in the town. The townspeople started hearing eerie noises late at night. They didn't see anyone in the dark streets, but rumors began to spread about people mysteriously disappearing. The townsfolk began to suspect that Jeff might have returned. Jeff had become like a ghost, wandering the town. At night, he had turned into a frightening figure, with eyes that glowed in the dark. Slowly, he had become a legend that everyone feared. No one dared to go outside in the town's nights. Jeff would silently watch the townspeople moving quietly, disappearing without a trace, like a ghost. One day, Jeff decided to return to his old house. It was the only place that still carried the traces of his past. When he opened the door of the old house, everything was as it had been. However, Jeff no longer saw himself in this place. He didn't want to face the remnants of the old Jeff. As he looked back, he realized how peaceful everything had once been. But that old child was gone. Years of pain, bullying, anger, and loneliness had transformed him into a monster. That innocent boy would never return. He had become a dark figure, and there was no escaping it. Standing in front of the old mirror in the house, he didn't want to see himself. He realized that he would never regain that soft face, that old smile, or his pure state. The emptiness inside him caused him more pain every day, yet somehow, he didn't care. Jeff had become a legend for the town. No one remembered him as a real person. He was just a figure of fear. He had become the embodiment of the deepest fears felt by the townspeople in the dark of night. His name echoed among the people like a nightmare. Jeff's presence remained like a dark stain on the town. No one knew who he was or why he had become this way. The question on everyone's mind was, why did Jeff become like this? And he never provided an answer, because no explanation could ever convey the pain and loss he had endured. He had become nothing more than a legend, a nightmare. The townspeople lived each night with the thought that he was watching them. And Jeff, fading into the darkness, continued to evolve into the terrifying figure of the legend. Thus, the story of Jeff's transformation, his relationship with his family, the bullying he suffered at school, and how he ultimately became this dark entity, became a source of fear for the townspeople. The story of how the innocent child turned into a hollow, dark being had become the very essence of terror for the town.